You guys feeling good this morning? You guys feeling okay? Awesome. All right, we're going to continue in our series around the Psalms, and today we're going to be talking about confusion, the gift of confusion, and I'm really excited. By the time that we leave here this morning, we'll have a little bit more clarity on the blessing and the benefits of seasonal confusion. You guys are like, wow, that sounds terrible. But just stay with me if you would. A couple of things to make you guys aware of. My name is Raissa Kubandi. I am the student pastor here. And in just 9 short days, I'm going to load up multiple vehicles, throw some teenagers and a couple of willing adults in there, and we're going to drive down to Colorado Springs, and we're going to go to Desperation Conference, and I am so excited about that. And so if you as a church would just be praying for me, be praying for the teenagers. I've had a lot of really impactful moments when I was surrounded by other people that were worshiping and that were praying and that were receiving the word of God. So this is pray that this weekend will be a time where kids will hear from the Lord, where they'll receive their calling, where freedom will come, where joy will come, and that it'll be a jolly good time. At one point or another during that weekend, we're going to be doing some karaoke. So I've been practicing my Taylor Swift, my NSYNC, okay? I've been listening to the clean versions of Drake so I could rap along with the young people, you know? Like, it's just been really hard to bleep out all the words, but I've been practicing, and I am ready for it, you know? One of my teenagers told me about this artist named Yeet, and I went because I want to be cool, hip, and trendy, right? I want to go listen to this young man's, what he calls music, and I discovered I've become that person, right? Like I've become at some point there was a threshold that passed, and I'm like, man, they don't make music like they used to anymore. Something happened. So pretty soon I will be retired, and that's fine. So be praying for us. And if you're someone that's like, hey, I would like to give towards sponsoring a student to go, you can totally do that on our giving tab on our website. So if you're like, Raissa, should I pray or should I give? Preferably both, but primarily please be praying for us because I believe that God wants to do something special in the lives of our students. If you have your Bible, turn with me to Psalm 77. We're just going to read the entire thing, and then I will get into the preaching part of this morning. Hey, how about those Lakers, man? Huh? No? I just want to make sure you guys are still in the room. All right, Psalm 77. Psalm 77. All right. The writer says this: I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out my untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. I remembered you, God, and I groaned. I meditated, and my spirit grew faint. You kept my eyes from closing. I was too troubled to speak. I thought about the former days, the years of long ago. I remembered my songs in the night. My heart meditated, and my spirit asked, will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has in his anger withheld his compassion? Then I thought, to this I will appeal. For the years when the Most High stretched out his right hand, I'll remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I'll remember your miracles of long ago. I'll consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. Your ways, God, are holy. What God is as great as our God? You are the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the peoples. With your mighty arm, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. The waters saw you, God. The waters saw you and writhed, and the very depths were convulsed. The clouds poured down water. The heavens resonated with thunder. Your arrows flashed back and forth. Your thunder was heard in the whirlwind. Your lightning lit up the world. The earth trembled and quaked. Your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. You led your people like a flock by the hands of Moses and Aaron. What I love about the psalm is that the writer starts off talking about a season in his life where things got so difficult he could not sleep. He would call out to God continuously, and he felt like God was no longer answering his prayers. And I know that for me, I have gone through moments and I've gone through seasons like this where things are so difficult, where what I thought I knew becomes questioned because of what I'm experiencing. And what this writer does is that he turns to God in his moment of confusion. He turns to God in his moment of fear. And I love that we get to see a beautiful picture of what that process of coming through confusion can do for all of us. One of the most recent times that I was confused was about a month ago. I've made the decision that I want to be a better employee. Like, that's something I decided. I was like, hey, you know what? I want to be more better, okay? That's my goal. And so there's certain things I'm really good at, right? Like, put me in front of people, I will dominate. Not dominate the conversation, but I will do well in that setting, right? Like, give me a speech to say or something to articulate, I can do that. Give me an Excel sheet and things get sketchy, right? Like anything administrative, things kind of get weird. And so one of the elders here, her name is Amy Krebs, she is a boss, right? She is a boss administrator. And so her and I hang out about once or twice a month. And so I texted her. I was like, yo, Amy, I want to become a better administrator. Can you help me with this? And she was like, yeah, bet. Come over. I'll help you, whatever you need. We'll spend a couple of hours and I'll show you some stuff. And I was like, a couple of hours? That's interesting. That's an extended amount of time. So I go over to her house and I walk into her home office, and as I walk in, I see 3 computer screens open, right? Just boom, boom, boom. I see Excel. I see she uses Microsoft for her email, but I see her email open, and I see something I've never seen before, so I ignore it because I don't know where she's taking me over there, right? And over the course of the next 2 hours, she showed me all of these shortcuts in Excel. She showed me how she organized her email. She showed me how she organized her drive. Like, she was just, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then back in 2019, I did this, and here's how I do my to-do list. And I sat there for 2 hours, mouth open, just like, and at the end, Amy looks over at me with this massive smile on her face, and she was like, do you want to learn anything more? Like, because there's so much more I want to show you. And I literally looked at her, like, just overwhelmed and scared, and I was like, Amy, I just need to process what I just saw. I need a couple of days, weeks now, just to put into practice what you just showed me, because it was like a level of information intake that felt like a foreign language, right? Both my parents speak 7+ languages, and so like whenever there's a new language kind of introduced to me, I can kind of pick up context clues, but it was like walking into a house for the first time and hearing Chinese or hearing Mandarin for the first time. Like, it felt so overwhelming. I was like, how does Excel do that? How did you figure out how to sort it that way? You can hide information and then reveal information, then you can sort it that way. And some of the people that are wired like me are like, what are you saying, right? But then the administrative geniuses are like, yeah, how do you do work if you don't know how to do that? Luck and charisma. That's how I do work. Just luck and charisma. And so here's what happens with confusion, right? The emotion of confusion can produce the feeling of being lost. And because of this, it can be perceived as a negative emotion, right? Because when we receive new information, we can sometimes feel lost, and so we automatically assume that confusion is a bad thing. But the Delft Institute of Positive Design, you're like, Delft, what is that? It's the second best engineering school in the world, MIT won, yeah, America. Okay, anyway, this is how they define confusion. You will feel confused when you receive information that you cannot match with what you already know or believe to be true. You will feel confused when you receive information that you cannot match with what you already know or believe to be true. Confusion is just a part of the process of learning something new. So it's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it is a part of a process. And so here is what we see from the psalmist as he or she is going through the season of confusion. The first thing that happens when we are confused is we begin to ask questions. In confusion, we question. Psalm 77 says this, "Will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in his anger withheld his compassion?" The writer is like, this is how I thought God worked. Here is what I am going through. These things are not matching. And because these things are not matching, I have a lot of questions. Have you forgotten how to love? Is your anger more powerful than your kindness? Are you unaware of what I am experiencing? Sometimes seasons of difficulty make us question the things that we thought we knew about who God is and how he works. And so when we are in a space of confusion, we ask questions. The second thing that the writer demonstrates for us is that in confusion, we remember. We remember a few things. The first thing we remember is we remember our personal experiences and stories. In verse 5 and 6, he says, "I thought about the former days, the years of long ago. I remembered my song in the night." One of the things that I have come to find as I have walked with Jesus is that over time, he and I have built stories together. We've built memories together. There have been moments where I questioned his goodness and he came through in ways that I wasn't expecting. And so when I go through a new hard thing, I remember the old good thing that he has done before. That when we go through seasons of challenge and we go through seasons that produce the emotion of confusion, we remember our personal experiences and our personal stories. The writer says, "I remember my song in the night," that when things were darkest, I remember the songs that came out of that. The second thing that we remember in confusion is that we remember our cultural experiences and stories. Verses 10 through 15 says this, "To this I will appeal, the years when the Most High stretched out his right hand. I'll remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I'll remember your miracles of long ago. I'll consider your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. Your ways, God, are holy. What God is as great as our God? You are the God who performs miracles. You display your power amongst the peoples. With your mighty arm, you redeemed your people, his descendants of Jacob and Joseph." The descendants of Jacob and Joseph. So the writer says, hey, I remember my personal experiences and stories, but I also remember our cultural experiences and stories. He says, I look back on how you delivered us from Egypt. I look back on what you did for Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. I look back on the different times that you delivered us from Babylon. I can remember what you've done for me, and I can remember what you've done for my nation. A few weeks ago, we celebrated Juneteenth, which was the celebration of the last group of slaves in Texas receiving the word that freedom has come. An interesting thing that I learned about Juneteenth this year is that another name for it is called Jubilee Day. And the reason why that enslaved people group called it Jubilee Day, because the promise of God was fulfilled on that day. And so when I look at my story, when I look at moments of confusion and fear, I can remember the goodness of God personally, and I can remember the goodness of God culturally, because our God is as good as he has promised he is. In times of confusion, we remember. The third thing that we remember in times of confusion is we remember our cosmic story. So it goes from personal to cultural to cosmic. Verse 16 says, "The water saw you, God. The water saw you and writhed the depths, the very depths were convulsed." So this is super dope, okay? I am not like an artist or an art nerd or whatever, but I think this is dope. What I like about music, what I like about poetry, what I like about good stories is finding the little Easter eggs in the stories, right? Do we have any Marvel fans in here? Okay, so my sister, the coolest person I know, but also the biggest nerd I know, right? So whenever a new Marvel movie would come out, she would spend a couple hours on YouTube watching videos about the movie she was about to go watch, and then watching videos about the other movies that came before the movie, so that way she'd be able to spot Easter eggs. She'd be like, "Yo, you see that kid over there? That's Spider-Man as an infant." I'm like, "What?" You're so weird, right? It's so weird. And so right here, right, the writer of the psalm is giving us a little Easter egg, because first he talks about the freedom of the children of Israel from Egypt, and then he superimposes the creation poem by saying that the waters writhed when they saw God. So if you go all the way back to Genesis, right, the Bible tells us the Spirit of God hovered over the waters, right, and then the Spirit of God told the waters where to stop. And where the Lord told the waters to stop, there they stopped. And so what the author is reminding himself of, and those of us that are going to read it later, is that, hey, God, you are a part of my personal story, you're a part of my cultural story, but you were also there at the very beginning. And so if I am questioning your goodness or your favor or your faithfulness, I can remember what you've done for me, I can remember what you've done for your people, but I can also remember that you started this whole thing and you will finish it well. And so in seasons of confusion, we go from personal to cultural to cosmic, and we see God in every single phase. So in confusion, we question. In confusion, we remember. And through confusion, we learn. Through confusion, we learn. Brené Brown says this in her book, Atlas of the Heart. She says, "The concept of optimal confusion is key to understanding why it is good for us and why it is categorized as an epistemic emotion, an emotion critical to sorry. Andrews asked me if I wanted water, and I said no, and he was right." Talk amongst yourselves for a moment. You give the youth pastor one Sunday, and they just change all the rules. Okay, we're back. Okay, the concept of optimal confusion is key to understanding why it is good for us and why it is categorized as an epistemic emotion, an emotion critical to knowledge acquisition and learning. It turns out that confusion, like many uncomfortable things in life, is vital for learning. According to research, confusion has the potential to motivate, lead into deep learning, and trigger problem solving. Confusion does all those things. It can motivate, lead to deeper learning, and trigger problem solving. So it's kind of a gift. It's an opportunity to grow and to develop. So this is like some Bible nerd stuff, so if you guys will just flow with me, stick with me here, all right? So verses 14 through 20 of Psalm 77 is a poetic retelling of Exodus 13, verses 17 through 14:31. So it's a retelling of the children of Israel being freed from slavery, right? And for those of you that are new to church or haven't been to church in a long time, or who are like me, who didn't pay attention to church, right? I remember I was 19 years old when I first started reading through the Bible, like from beginning to end, and I read this is gonna be crazy. So I read the Moses story, and I was like, it's not like the Prince of Egypt. Like, I was like, dang. That's not good. So let me give you some context, right? So Israel is a nation that comes from a family, right? So Abraham was this dude. God called him and said, hey, I'll make you a great nation. Then Abraham has 2 sons. Things get sketchy. But one of his sons, Isaac, is how the nation kind of becomes its own thing. Then Isaac has a son named Jacob. And then Jacob has like 12 sons. There's a whole gang of them. And then one of the sons got this really dope coat, right? He was a hype beast, so he was flexing on his siblings. And then all of a sudden, his brother's like, yo, you can't just show up here in a dope coat. We're going to send you. We're going to kill you. And then one of the brothers like, no, let's not kill him. Let's send him into slavery. And they're like, I bet, slavery it is. So they send Joseph into slavery. Joseph is then a slave, crazy. Then he gets hired by this dude, but his wife falls in love with him, right? And he's like, no, that girl is poison. And he tries to run away from her, right? But as he's running, his coat falls off, which that's why you have to tie your belt on tight, but that's a different story for a different day. He's running, her husband comes back, and she's like, no, he tried to do this, this, and that. And he's like, no, I didn't. And then he goes to jail. Joseph goes to jail. Joseph is in jail, then he has a dream. I have a dream, right? He has a couple of dreams in there. Then all of a sudden, he's sent in front of the king of Egypt, and he's like, yo, you had a crazy dream. I know what it means. He interprets the dream. All of a sudden, Joseph goes from his son, his dad's favorite son, to a slave, to prison, then to the second most powerful person in the world, okay? Now, you remember his brothers, right? Remember those dudes that sold him into slavery because he was flexing too hard? Those dudes show back up because they're broke, and there's no food, and they're hungry. They show up. Joseph recognizes them, and he's like, yo, I start from the bottom. Now I'm here, all right? He recognizes them. Then they're like, oh, snap, this is horrible, right? This is horrible. Joseph is going to kill us, but maybe if we promise that our dad is dying, he won't kill us. He doesn't kill them. Crazy. So now the whole family moves to Egypt. All of them, all like 80, 90, 100, 300 of them, right? All of them move to Egypt. They become shepherds because, you know, why not? They become shepherds. Then all of a sudden, there's too many of them, right? They're like, oh, our city's getting overcrowded. So the Egyptians are like, you know what? We're going to make all y'all slaves. So then all of them become slaves. After that, after hundreds of years of slavery, right, this dude named Moses gets born. This is real important. He's going to be re-mentioned later on, but just remember him. Moses gets born, then God says, hey, I've heard the cry of my people. Y'all have been slaves too long. I'm going to free you through this dude named Moses. Moses had all these emotional issues, but that's a different message for a different day. Then God frees them all, right? But before he frees them, the king of Egypt's like, yo, you think you can leave me? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, nah. So after he says you can go, he starts chasing them. Now let's pick up the story in Exodus chapter 14, verse 8, right? So they're free, but now the Egyptian king is coming back after them, right? Is everybody tracking with me? Like 2 million of them, is a gang of them. Oh, side note, Egypt is like the biggest, baddest army in the world. So picture all of America's armed forces, the billions and billions of dollars that we spend a year on that. Imagine them chasing a bunch of people with sticks and knives and stuff, okay? So here's where we are. So Exodus 14:8 says this. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites who were marching out boldly. So imagine receiving the word that God has set you free, and now you're leaving. And so the children of Israel are marching out with swag. Like, they're just like, I just had an Outkast song forwards in my head, and I can't sing it. But they were feeling themselves, right? They were feeling themselves, right? They were doing a very, very stylish walk out. They were marching out boldly. But then in verse 10, it says, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and they were the Egyptians marching after them, and they were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They went from boldness, confidence, and swag to terror and complaining. I don't know about you, but I am them. There have been many moments in my life where God has said, go do this, and I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready. And I step in. You know, I remember when I got my first youth pastor job. And I didn't say this out loud, but I said to my friends, I was like, I'm going to run this place one day. It was a 100-year-old church, but I was like, I'm 22. Maybe at 26 I'll be in charge. I don't know. So much confidence, right? So much swag, so much belief in what God had said to me. But then when things got hard, when things got overwhelming, I got terrified and I complained. I was like, hey, yo, this is not what I signed up for. And here's the crazy thing about this point in the story, is that they can't just go back, right? So I've gone too far into the yes to turn back, and so instead of questioning whether or not I can go back, I questioned the instructions. Like, God, did it even make sense for you to make me leave from the place where I was? So even though it was uncomfortable, and even though sometimes it was kind of not right and uneasy, at least I understood there. Because at least back there, I had my coping mechanisms. I had the things that made things a little bit easier. But out here, all I got is you. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I trust you that much. I don't know if I have the kind of confidence in you to come through. And so though I had confidence when you first sent me, now when things get hard, I'm questioning whether or not you should have sent me at all. So they go from boldness to terror. And then this amazing thing happens, right? So they're out there, then all of a sudden the Egyptians are like, let's go get him. And Moses is looking at God like, what you gonna do? And he's like, don't talk to me, cross the Red Sea. He's like, you said a sea? Now, we build stuff, but we haven't built a boat yet. And there's 2 million of us. You just want us to, he's like, yeah, you guys just go and I'll make it dry. He's like, puts his stick out there. Could you imagine being in charge and your team is like, we're about to go bankrupt. What are we gonna do? I got a stick. I got a stick in the promise. Right? So, this insane things happen where the Spirit of God goes before them, and what was a sea becomes dry land. And they walk through on dry land with water on both sides and fire behind them, preventing the army from coming after them. So you got water, dry land, fire, and you got millions of people crossing, and there's a dude with a stick. Here's what is mind-boggling about this moment, is that for those of us that have grown up in church, this story is common. But for the people that were in that space, they could have never imagined God coming through that way. They may have believed that God, allowed Abraham to make Sarah pregnant when she was barren. They may have believed that God created the earth. They may have believed that God told the waters to stop. But when they were in an army chasing them, an ocean in front of them, and a leader that doesn't seem to know what they're doing leading them, they could not have imagined God coming through that way. And so my question for you this morning, for those of you that are facing confusion, is it possible that God is doing a creative thing to deliver you? Is it possible that the reason you can't see a solution is because he hasn't revealed it yet? Is it possible that though you know who he is, you may not fully know all the ways that he works? And so here's what happens after this moment. Verse 31 of Exodus 14 says, and when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord. They were in awe of God. They were in awe of God. And they put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. So what do we learn through confusion? We learn more about God. We learn more about who we are and how we respond. The second thing we learn is we learn more about how God works. Through confusion, when we receive this new information, we learn more about God, we learn more about ourselves, and we learn more about how we respond to situations. In some situations, I'm cool, calm, and collected. When I'm in charge, I'm chilling. When I am by myself, I am freaking out, right? And sometimes I have to remind myself, Raissa, this is your initial response, you're gonna be fine. Freak out for a second, cry for a second, you'll be okay. In other times where things are going crazy, I'm like, we'll figure it out. I learn more about how I respond. But I also learn more about how God works. My favorite thing about God is that he always does old things in a new way. God is always loving, but his love for me at 31 looks very different than it did at 16. God has always been faithful, but his faithfulness at 19 looked very different than it did at 27. God has always been merciful, but his mercy towards me has looked different in every season. So though his character changes, as though his character stays the same, its expression changes. God is always doing old things in a brand new way. So, in confusion we question, in confusion we remember, through confusion we learn. This is the last thing. In confusion we are led. In confusion we are led. Brené Brown in her book says this: so we have the zone of optimal confusion and desirable difficulty. Desirable difficulty can be explained this way. In the same way that you feel a muscle burn when it's being strengthened, the brain needs to feel discomfort when it's learning. That's so dope. So if you haven't been uncomfortable in a while, I would question how much you're learning. But what happens when things get too confusing? Based on DeMello's research, too much confusion can lead to frustration, giving up, disengagement, or even boredom. Learning strategies most often used to help resolve confusion were seeking help, and then she lists a bunch of others. The learning strategies most often used to help resolve confusion were seeking help. In confusion, we are led by imperfect people. The writer says this: you led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Now, I told you guys earlier about Moses. We bookmarked him, right? Like, we bookmarked him. Moses was an extremely special dude. He was a generational leader. He was someone that was educated in the courts of Egypt, so he was a highly educated man. He was someone that was strong, and the Bible tells us that Moses spoke to God face to face the way a man speaks to a friend. Moses also murdered somebody and covered up that murder. Moses was so consumed with his leadership responsibilities that he left his family behind, and so his father-in-law was like, hey, yo, keep leading the people, but here's your wife and kids. You're gonna do that and this. Moses was told by God over and over again, hey, you're gonna go do this, but he argued with God so much that God assigned him a partner who's Aaron. Now, Aaron's kind of dope too, because he was like the first high priest of the people of Israel, so he would offer the sacrifices and he would help the people figure out the laws, and he was super dope. But Aaron was kind of a punk. When Moses was in the mountain receiving the laws from God, Aaron was down on the mountain recreating Coachella and Burning Man all at once. People were just out here, right? Moses comes down, he's like, hey, yo. And Aaron's like, they made me do it. Right? Aaron and his sister Miriam at one point were like, we don't want Moses to be in charge. Why can't we be in charge? So they try to rebel against Moses. But yet, the psalmist says, you, God, led us as your people by the hand of these two imperfect leaders. What does that mean for you and I? What does that call us to? We have two responsibilities. One, we have to pick leaders. We need mentors. We need people that are a little bit further along on their faith journey, a little bit further along in their marriage, a little bit further along in their finances to just sit with and ask questions to. We need a handful of people that can look at us in the eye and be like, that's a bad idea. And us trust that they have our best interest in mind. And though everything in us wants to do that thing, we can trust that God is leading us through them. That God has entrusted them with this. Raissa, but what about leaders that aren't worthy of being followed and have bad character? If they have bad character, don't follow them. If their marriage is falling apart, don't ask them about marriage advice. If they're up to their necks in debt, don't ask them about money. So we have a responsibility to find mentors, and we have a responsibility to be mentors. Raissa, my life is not together enough to be able to invest in someone else's life. All right, what do you have to do to get there? What do you need to rearrange in your life? Do you need more accountability? Do you need to create more margin in your time? Do you maybe need to go to therapy to work out some of those things on the inside of you that you haven't been addressing? Is there some sin that you need to be more open and honest about? We have to both be led and to lead. We will never do it perfectly. We will never do it perfectly, but it is an invitation that God is giving all of us in this room. Pastor Rob says, Raissa, anytime you're on stage, it's an advertisement for the student ministry. If you want to impact the generation, step up and give your time. If you're like, Raissa, I don't have that kind of time or that kind of energy, all right, I'll send you all the kids' names and you can pray for them. But guys, we have to take our places as leaders and invest in people. And you may be like, I'm not cool. Are you consistent? I'm not trendy. Are you kind? I don't have all the answers. Can you ask good questions? Because that's what a good mentor does. Raissa, I don't like teenagers. Great. There's plenty of people in their 20s and 30s that need some guidance. All right, I have a cohort of 4 women, 3 of them that live here, 1 of them that lives in Atlanta, that I call about all of the things. That I call before dates and after dates. That look over my budget and be like, you can't afford to do all these things. But I'm like, a new pair of Jordans is coming out this month. You can't afford them. All right, cool. It's fine. I don't need a 27th pair. Pray for me, guys. So we're led by imperfect leaders, but we're also led by God. It says this in verse 19, which I think is the most beautiful verse, and band, feel free to come back up. It says, your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. Your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. One of my favorite things about looking back over my life is seeing the footprints of God. It's so obvious now. It's like so obvious. I remember when I was, I think I was like 7 or 8 years old, I told my parents, hey, Kevin and I are gonna go to college in America. I don't know. As a 7-year-old, I can't make that decision, but I told them that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do that. A few years later, this ministry called the Power Team came to. Now, if you think church is weird now, take a little bit of time this afternoon and look up the Power Team, right? It's all these football players and weightlifters, and they would just come to church and rip up phone books, which if you're like, what is a phone book? Google that too. They'd rip open phone books, they would break cinder blocks, and after they would show their strength, they'd be like, God is stronger. And I was like, yeah, he's stronger. It was crazy. I thought they were so cool. They were massive, like their arms were the size of my whole body, you know? And so the power team came to our church, and my mom ended up making suits for them. And then after some conversations, they're like, yo, we really sense that you and your family are called to America, and so you guys should come and come check it out. And that's kind of started our journey to the States. And when people ask me all the time, Raissa, how did you guys end up here? Well, I tell them the story of what my parents chose to do, but what I have come to realize is true is that God has sent me as a little African girl to America to be a missionary here. That me and my brother were planted here as missionaries to serve this amazing, beautiful, messy, complicated country. And how do I know this? Well, if you would have met me as a 7th grader and then probably as a senior in high school, this is the last thing you would have imagined me doing. If you would have met Kevin at 21, you would have been praying for his deliverance instead of him praying for your kids. And yet both of us are pastors, and my sister has been a small group leader for most of her life. And I honestly believe that for some reason that 7 or 8-year-old girl got an inkling from God that she was supposed to be here. And so now when I look back over my life, I can be like, oh, that was a fire, but God, you were there. Oh, that was water, that was a challenge, but God, you were there. Oh, that was a heartbreak, but no, God, you were there. Oh, you said no to this, but you were there. Oh, you said yes to that, and you were there. And now in every single season of my life, through the fire, through the water, through the seas, through joy, through pain, through fear, through confusion, through sadness and through gladness, I can see your footprints. I can see that you carried me. I can see that you saw me. And so if you're in this room and you're asking yourself, God, where are you? He's not somewhere up there, and he's not somewhere over there, and he's not somewhere back there. Instead, he is walking with you. And as you walk with him, and as you trust him, and as you believe in his goodness, even though you don't see the answers on the other side, I guarantee you that if you keep walking, if you keep moving, when you look back, you will see his footprints the whole way. Because though it was through the sea, and though it was through the waters, he was there, and he is also here. So in confusion, we question. In confusion, we remember. Through confusion, we learn, and in confusion, we are led. And he is leading us every single step of the way. So the question I have for you guys as we go into worship is this: who do you call when you're confused? For some of us, we need to get better about inviting people into that. We need to get more honest with friends, with mentors. We need to be more intentional about that. For others of us, we need to be more intentional about calling on God in our confusion. And if you're like me, I vacillate between the two. I vacillate between leaning too much on my friendships and not enough on God, and I lean a lot on God and not inviting my friends in. And so this morning for you, where are you? Do you need to be more intentional about calling on God? Or do you need to be more intentional about inviting people in? But wherever you are, the beautiful thing is that as we learn to trust Jesus, we will see him more and more clearly. Let's pray, let's sing, let's go home. Jesus, we love you. Holy Spirit, make your presence clear to us. We invite you here to do what only you can do, which is to transform the hearts and minds of people. In Jesus' name.